If it's not already obvious from all the videos this channel has made about the show, The Dragon Prince is one of my favorite currently airing cartoons. And ever since Season 2 aired back in February of this year, fans, myself included, have been eagerly awaiting the third season, which promised to wrap up the first arc of the series and bring the stakes to a whole new level. And let me tell ya, that was no lie. As with the past 2 seasons, this is going to be a spoiler-free review of the third season of The Dragon Prince, which releases on November 22nd. Netflix and Wonderstorm once again let me see the season early so I can make this review, giving you a look at what to expect. And there is just so much I want to talk about. A lot of it I can't yet because so many big events happen, but also I probably could go on for hours about this season. But anyways, I'm Hailey from Cartooniverse, and here's my review. This season wastes no time picking up right where the last one left off, while also expanding on the overall history of this world. The conflict between humans and magical creatures is becoming continuously more complex, and it's clearer than ever that both sides have done their fair share of terrible things. Now this level of world building is seen throughout the season, and I absolutely adore it, but I'll get into that more later. Of course, what I really should start off with is talking about the characters. We get to deal with everything from last season, with Ezran returning home to take his place as king, while Claudia and Soren also venture back to Katolis, Viren becoming a prisoner, and Callum and Rayla beginning their journey through Xadia, trying their best to protect Zim and bring him home to his mother. Each of these stories gets their time to shine, and there is so much that happens to each of them. That being said, I don't think I can choose a favorite character, because they're all very complex, and we continue to learn more about their stories and how they became the person they are today. But don't worry if you have a favorite from one of the previous seasons that has yet to be seen much. Almost every character got at least one scene, which when you have so many characters, can definitely be tricky. Characters such as Opeli, Corvus, and Gren all have some really good moments. Even Crowmaster is back. I cannot forget about Amaya, who also has a big role this season. When the creators told me that Amaya's situation was about to get complicated, that was no joke. And as you could probably guess, the alluring elf Aaravos has a bigger role this season, which is pretty impressive considering that he is just a caterpillar and has to really get Viren's cooperation to do much of anything. Many different types of relationships are explored this season, with a special focus on Callum and Rayla's and Viren's family as a whole. With some, their bonds grow even stronger, with others, they begin to break. Additionally, there are also a few other relationships and characters I know fans will be happy about, which add to the LGBT+ cast of the show. All that being said, with maybe a small exception, I would say it's clear now who is on what side, whereas before there may have been more of a grayer area. This might cause some disagreements among fans, but doesn't every show do that? So that was a tiny portion of my thoughts on the returning characters. We also get a ton of brand new ones, mostly elves, I might add, and oh my Garlath, they are amazing. In general, elves are just stunning looking, but there's just such a level of diversity and creativity with their designs that had me wowed. This season gives us our first real look at Skywing elves, who managed to look somehow extremely different than what I expected from the one we saw in Season 1, yet are still just as amazing. I could go on about the elves for a long time, but I'll keep this relatively short. This season we get to see some areas where elves actually live in Xadia, and if it wasn't clear before, it is now extremely evident that each primal elf type has a unique way of living, not only from how they dress and talk, but also from the way that they think about the world and how they build their homes from their way of thinking. These elven lands are gorgeous, and honestly, I'd be fine if the rest of the show took place in Xadia. And I've only mentioned the elves. Almost every single Xadian creature looks extremely different from those found in the human kingdoms, and overall, I think these animals have some of the best designs I've seen in any animated show. And of course I can't forget about the dragons. They are terrifying beasts, but they definitely have amazing designs, and hearing them speak is simply incredible. Speaking of all things Xadia, that brings me back to the lore of the show in general. I'm a huge fan of all the primal sources and what makes them different from each other. The Dragon Prince is extremely creative at making these elements different from how they are portrayed in other animated shows, and this level of detail is what makes me love the show so much. I will say that dark magic continues to be dark, which I suppose was obvious from many of the interviews I did with the creators, and basically from the show itself. Yet even still, elves and dragons have done their fair share of bad things, but does that always justify taking revenge? This season explores this and many other deep questions. But it's now become incredibly clear just how much of the story was planned from the very beginning. Unlike other shows where you can kind of tell they were more or less making things up as they went, there are many scenes that now have so much more context and many questions have now gotten answers. All these pieces fit together so well and it's just so satisfying. At the same time, it's also amazing that we can now see that the fans have actually been impacting the show itself. The character Marcos was actually named at the San Diego Comic-Con 2018 panel by a fan, and in this season, he says his name. This made me so happy to see, and I cannot wait to see any future nods to the fandom in the show. Now of course there's always some risk to listening to fans too much, but I don't think the show will ever suffer from that. It is also worth mentioning that this season ups the gross factor. You can mostly thank Aaravos for that, yet again. In addition to that, this season gets really violent. It's amazing that this show isn't afraid to take risks and show things that cartoons on regular television probably could not for this demographic, but be warned, this season may not be for very small children. Additionally, the sheer size of everything shown on the screen at once has really increased. This season had to pull off some huge scenes, and it's crazy that these were beautifully animated. Now, as for the animation itself, I can happily say that it's great. While I didn't see the biggest difference between Season 2 and 3 compared to 1 and 2, the show continues to look even better than before, and it was definitely worth the long wait. So the character arcs were great, the designs of the world and characters are amazing, the animation is fluid, and the show gets even deeper. What else is there to mention? Oh yeah, there are a few small things I would say the season has some issues with. Once again, there's only so much that can be done with 9 episodes per season, and with Season 3 acting as a wrap-up season for many of the arcs from the previous seasons, then did feel a bit rushed. But besides that, one thing I noticed in basically all the seasons so far is how the characters traveling to one place far away for the first time may take multiple episodes to get there. But then when another character or group of characters goes to that same place, it seems to be a relatively quick or easy journey. There's usually a pretty decent explanation as for why they are able to do so, but it still bugs me. And one other thing I have a complaint with, I have to be a bit vague with, but I will say that there is a threat from within Xadia, who I'm pretty sure we saw before, but all of a sudden this character is conspiring against Ezran in an attempt to remove him from his throne. I really wish we would have expanded on this character more, but maybe the show will in the future. Like, I'm pretty sure they never even said their name in the actual dialogue. On the other hand, Kasif, the Neolondian prince mentioned last season, has a huge role, and he gets a good amount of development. Finally, this is more of a wish than a nitpick, but I'm still holding out for an episode where the characters just have fun and nothing too big happens. I understand with only 9 episodes per season it is very hard to do this, but I can dream, okay? I guess we have to settle for those amazing skits the voice actors perform at cons.
Don't you have constellations in Xadia?
Yeah, we do, but we don't look at those stars and see a big spoon.
So what do you see?
Garlath the Annihilator.
And that's basically my thoughts on the season. So I think I've talked enough, and since DEEPCUT has also seen the season, I invited him to share his thoughts on it. Take it away.
Thanks, Hailey. As you described, this season marks the end of a trilogy of seasons, but it certainly isn't the end of the story. While most of the major plot points are wrapped up in a neat little bow, they definitely set up the fact that this trilogy itself is just the first part in an even bigger trilogy of story arcs that they are telling. Seeing just how epic in scope things get here is very promising. It already feels like a climactic finish, but we know that the journey only gets bigger as it goes forward. Journeying deeper into the East confirmed a theory of mine from an earlier video that whatever causes magical beings to exist seems to be rooted in the East itself. Everything from the animals to the landscapes are all insanely more magical than they have been in previous seasons. The only disappointment is that we got so little time exploring them all. With 4 more seasons in the plan and hopefully on the way, Xadia itself is definitely something we're going to be seeing more of. The season ramps things up fast, giving the audience exactly what they need, exactly what was foreshadowed, and exactly what the story deserves. If I had a criticism for this season, it would be that it was almost too perfectly written. I've seen this in other shows that have a very clearly defined plan from the beginning, where you get to the end and things fall into place with almost too much ease. Everything has its appropriate cause and reaction, but it sometimes is missing the appropriate struggle behind it that tends to come from a place of struggling to tie up your loose ends as a writer. Despite this, you'll be racing towards the end as fast as the show itself is moving and enjoy every twist and turn the ride has to offer. I sat down and watched the entire season in one sitting and couldn't have had a more comfy way to spend my day.
Thank you, DEEPCUT. I definitely agree with you. Now that wraps up my Dragon Prince Season 3 review, and there is so much more I want to talk about, but it will have to wait until after the season has officially aired. Make sure to stay tuned for an interview with the creators about Season 3, which will be released soon after the season premieres. But most importantly, tell your friends about this show. If they love hot elves or any type of magical creatures, magic, or just a show kind of like Avatar: The Last Airbender, then they need to watch this. We need people to watch this show so we can get all 7 seasons and so much more. Also, if you want more Dragon Prince content made by fans, check out the podcast I made with my friend Kuno. It's called the Hot Brown Morning Potion Podcast, and we did an episode where we interviewed the creators, as well as Viren's voice actor, and Viren himself. It's on all big podcast apps, and I will link it in the description below. Or check out any of the other theories or interview videos I've made for the channel if you are interested in learning more about the world of the Dragon Prince. It really is a wonderful show. Have an animated day.